Hey everyone, welcome to Taking the Pulse, a healthcare and life sciences video podcast. I am Heather Hoops Matthews here today with Matthew Roberts, a Maynard Nexon healthcare attorney. Matthew, good to be with you.
Good to see you. Glad to be here.
And we are coming to you live from NC LifeSci. This is the annual meeting of the North Carolina Life Sciences Organization, drawing together global leaders really to talk about what's next in life sciences. And we are delighted today to have with us John Van Hoy. John is the Executive Director of Data Sciences and Advanced Analytics at PPD. And PPD, as some of you may know, and we're going to talk about this, is part of Thermo Fisher. John, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Talk a little bit about your role at PPD and that you have become part of a larger platform.
Sure. I'll start there. PPD was founded in North Carolina, long-standing clinical research organization, one of the industry's largest. About 2.5 years ago, we were acquired by Thermo Fisher Scientific. So that really has been a pleasure to be a part of. We're now part of a larger organization that spans more of sort of life sciences and sciences in general. And it's extended our capabilities, the resources we bring to bear. So the journey's been really as easy and as interesting and helpful as I can imagine.
Great.
And I think we're a stronger scientific company because of it.
Fantastic.
And then my role, so I'm in AI and advanced analytics, and I head the CRO portion, advanced analytics for the CRO. And so that role, I think you can consider AI, it's a big buzzword, but I tend to think of it as just a set of technologies that could help us become more efficient in what we do. And so my role really is, I'm sort of a liaison, so I understand clinical trial operations, so I'm linking between the operational colleagues and then the technology. I have a good understanding of AI technologies as much as possible. It's changing quickly,
right.
And help the company understand where the opportunities, where there's a good fit between the technology and the business needs. And then as a leader in this function, I'm helping to prioritize where we choose to focus. And then the other hat I wear is actually operation, like executing on those projects where we're trying to ultimately make our business more efficient, and then really ultimately bring what PPD tries to do in Thermo Fisher is bring therapies to patients faster. So that's really the goal.
So at every one of these life science meetings in the last 1.5 to 2 years, AI comes up. So with the clinical research organization, give us some specifics about how AI works and enhances or improves the clinical research process.
Sure. A couple things where we choose to focus. One is on how we design clinical trials, right? So there's a host of ways using data, using generative AI that now we can do. We can design clinical trials that are going to be a little bit easier, hopefully, and faster to execute, right? So that helps us get through the clinical trial faster. That's one area. Another area that where AI and technology is becoming helpful is in the experience of the patient, and in our case, the experience of the investigator. So we work a lot with clinical trial sites and the physicians and investigators there, and of course I mentioned patients. So there's a lot of opportunity for technology to make the role of the patient on a clinical trial easier. And so an example of that would be just a few years ago, generally a patient would have to go to the clinical trial site a lot during a clinical trial, and that's changed pretty significantly. So, information, data, health values can be measured by devices and technology wearables. We can actually execute visits outside of the site. So that's how we're trying to use technology to make it a little bit easier for the patient.
Are you using AI in helping identify potential clinical research participants?
Yeah.
That's also a challenge, to get the big enough group. But has AI been able to help? I would imagine it would be able to.
Yeah, that's one of the most important areas. So that, to me, that problem is all about finding data and information about those patients. And one thing that's become useful recently is the generative AI and the ability for AI systems to understand unstructured data, like when a physician takes notes, or information that's like in a medical imagery, right? Because our clinical medical records aren't very sort of fulsome in the amount of information they carry, but the information from, when your doctor takes notes, or when you get imaging done, that's a much richer set of information. And so the AI technology allows us to look into that. And you're right, that's how we're, in some cases, finding patients much more
In the
easily.
American health record, most of the information is related to payments,
and that's how it was.
Not actual,
Exactly.
what the physician heard, saw,
Exactly.
and what the patient felt.
Yep. And it varies a lot. There's a lot of opportunity for improvement there as well.
You mentioned that this is such a dynamic part of your industry right now. What are the challenges that you're facing in your role?
Sure. A lot of challenges. So a couple I would mention. One, the AI models that have become really foremost productized recently, ChatGPT and large language models of the like, they can get things wrong. So this problem of hallucinations that you've heard of, that in a regulated environment where ultimately patient safety is, at the end of the day, is on the line, that's not a very good fit. So we have a lot of opportunity, is the way I'll frame it, to bring that technology into a regulated space. Recruiting, right, is always difficult. But I think finding here in North Carolina, actually having a lot of success. And like, for example, today I got to partner and speak with a UNC data science school. So we're trying to address that. And I think actually North Carolina is a great place for recruiting. And then I think the last thing I'll just mention is the speed of the technology, right? So just right at the time when we're able to sort of get our hands around how we're going to use the most recent model that you read about, it's already changed. And so it's that part of the difficulty of my role is to be able to grab something that's changing pretty quickly and apply it.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about PPD and how it works. With respect to use of AI. As a clinical research organization, you're facilitating the research. If someone's come to you and said, I have this idea, I want to look at this, either device, product, whatever. What other kind of services do you provide potential clients or customers, however you want to call them, to help facilitate the entire process? Is it sort of a turnkey operation, or is it a la carte in terms of what services you can provide during the clinical research?
Yeah, it's both. So you just kind of defined two of our big operating models, but we can, there's as everybody knows, the clinical trial is an expensive, complicated global endeavor. There's many different what I would call functional areas. So to name a few of those, there's medical writing and the analysis of the clinical data that's generated, and ultimately authoring the documentation that's submitted for regulatory approval. So those all are spaces where generative AI is where we're evaluating. As I mentioned, there's a lot of activity around recruitment of the patient, and
for the trial,
and then facilitating their their participation through the trial,
onboarding, and then throughout the
And then there's a lot going on before the trial starts with planning the trial, designing the right trial. So those are some of the areas that, and it would be, I could probably spend a while listing all of the different sort of functional services we provide.
Is there, I asked another way, based on what you do, is there anything that PPD does with clinical research that couldn't benefit from AI?
I've been saying recently that I think the answer is, it's almost easier to answer the question, what will AI not affect? And so there's this tension. I think it has so many broad applications and opportunities, but at the same time, as I was saying, it's a regulated space. We have to be really careful, when we apply something that's essentially at core sort of a probabilistic prediction or model output into this regulated space. But I've been asked the question before, where will it not be effective? And I'm not it's hard for me to come up with an answer.
Right.
I
I think
to,
it's
Yeah.
particularly with what you do, it's hard to come up with a definitive answer.
Yeah.
What about, as we know, clinical research requires the patient to be informed on every aspect of what's happening, including the potential risks, et cetera. How do you educate the clinical research participants on the use of AI in the process? Because that's relatively new, and I presume it's part of their onboarding or education. As to
it
what
is. Right. Yeah, I'll kind of, there's two parts of that. One is kind of today and one is tomorrow.
Right.
Today, one of the things that generative AI does really good is take what's technical documentation, for instance. And any of us can do this. You could say, I want a quick summary of this, right? And I want a layman's understanding of what this document is about. And in a lot of sense, the informed consent process, where we're explaining to a patient what the trial, what's going to happen, we want to make it as understandable as possible. So that's one thing that we and some of our customers are doing, is using generative AI for the informed consent process. But
I've written a lot of informed consents, and I'm always interested to see, are the lawyer written informed consents better than AI? I can tell you this, the AI informed consents don't sound like they're written by a lawyer a lot of times, so which is good in some ways.
I was going to say, is that good or bad?
Yeah.
Well, it's good and it's more understandable. Whether it comports with the requirements from a compliance standpoint.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. There's a second part, and this is getting a little bit down the road, but people expect their information a little bit, not always wanting to read a contract.
Right.
Yeah.
People interact with each other in different ways now, social media and even things like virtual reality, and so there are companies exploring what's a different way than having someone read a form to help them understand, why are we doing the clinical trial, what should they expect, and really help them understand the pros and the cons and the risks that they might be taking when they decide to join the clinical trial.
Well, that's good. We run into that concept all the page.
Yeah, we sure do.
Video is a new medium for that communication.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit easier than reading the words on a page.
And I guess AI could probably then, after a few, predict the questions that would be asked, and so then it would have the answers ready.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's kind of, in my mind, that's an easy use case, to have that information at the tip of your fingers.
Right. It feels like you're on the great frontier.
It feels like that to me too, which is an exciting place. Sometimes a scary place, but I think we all are. I think no matter if you choose to be or not, our patients, right? Ultimately, our stakeholders expect us to find a better way to deliver healthcare at a cheaper price, and I choose to believe that this kind of technology is going to help us get there.
I agree.
Well, John Van Hoy, thank you so much for joining us. You are the Executive Director of Data Sciences and Advanced Analytics at PPD, now part of Thermo Fisher, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to help the company decide how to deploy AI. It's been interesting to hear many of your peers in the industry and how they're using it, and that's one of your sole focus. So.
That's right, yeah. Well, it's my pleasure. It's also been interesting for me to hear a lot of what my peers and colleagues are doing, so thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.